Hello, good morning. It's chilly, really cold. I went out for a long walk this morning and the frost, yes, there was frost, was out. It was quite misty as well. Kind of reminded me of home in the UK, and it really wasn't nice. I don't know what the temperature was, but it felt freezing. It clearly wasn't, but I guess it was around 5-6 degrees, which for me is Baltic, literally Baltic. I didn't come here for this. Joking. Look, you have to, look, when you're in Australia, yes, we're on the west. This is kind of desert temperatures, really. So in the summer, it's really hot, and it can get actually quite low at night. And in the winter, especially, it does get bloody freezing. And yeah, you just gotta take it. This is known as the windy city as well, so you get a lot of wind, and we've had a hell of a lot of rain, loads of rain. I had to buy what do you call them? A clothes era, which I haven't really used since the UK in the 1980s, 90s. But it's impossible to get things dry. I've got a dryer, but it's just constantly going. So I've got to get something to get clothes dry as well. And yeah, I hate it. I bloody hate this time of year. I really do. If I could, emigrate this time of year and come back again, fine. Sit me down to the ground. Okay, this week I'm just going to be doing a vlog. I'm not writing particularly, not on the blog anyway. I'm currently writing a book, and it's about collating memories, childhood memories, and I'm kind of putting it into a series of short stories. I suppose you'd call it an anthology of my childhood. And I've done about, what am I up to? 25,000 words at the moment. And it's quite difficult because the memories are there. I haven't necessarily got the pictorial memories, so I'm having to create those. I'm using AI to do that the best I can for the book. And it's coming along nicely. So, I mean, this weekend I should be spending a lot of time continuing that process. I do an hour a night when I get home, after I've eaten, and then I'm straight to bed. So I don't have an awful lot of time at the moment. So the blog isn't taking, back seat, but I'm just going to concentrate on doing a vlog for the next couple of weeks at least until the book is finished. And then I'll tell you more about it. So this week, I really want to talk about my childhood and how my sexuality affected it. And it's kind of linked to the book I'm writing at the moment, because there are some memories in there which do explore this in greater detail. Now, my childhood, for the most part, was idyllic, and I use that word often, but it was idyllic. I grew up near a village. My family had lived in this village for hundreds of years, and everyone knew each other. The neighbours knew you. The doors were left open. It was safe. You were outside playing until the sun went down, and then you meandered your way back home, and nothing ever happened at all. It was a very comforting environment to grow up in. It really was. So it was a special time. It really was. And especially that summer, that really hot summer we had in the UK in 1976. And it was absolutely amazing being a child at that age. I was 5 years old then, and you were playing outside, and it was hot. And I just, those were kind of my first memories, really. And the memories of being at school, Fairham Park Infant School. And I remember the school photo, and I was there, and it was boiling, and we were all boiling, and the photographer was trying to take the photos, and he was sweating. It was a fantastic time to be alive. in the 1970s were great times. And nobody had any money. we literally did not have any money. But nobody had any money really. We were kind of all in the same boat. And, you know, there was a 3-day working week, and there was power cuts and strikes and all these awful things going on, but it was great. I mean, I'm sure my parents would say different. They were probably struggling and they found it very, very hard. But as a child, you know, I had the best of everything. I had my family living around me, so it was quite easy, you know, to pop to my grandmother's, both my grandparents' houses really. So it was, special. Obviously, I was also contending with my sexuality. Now, I was trying to think about this the other day, about when I sort of knew I was homosexual. And I suppose I must have been aware around the time of puberty. I was quite an early starter in that respect. And I guess it was, about 11 years old. And I found myself attracted to men. And it was quite bizarre, because at that age we were having those first sex education lessons, and my own feelings were at odds with what we were being taught, because obviously back then you're not taught about same-sex relationships at all. In fact, we weren't really taught much about any kind of relationships. It was more to do with pollination of plants, and yeah, that's how far sex education's come on over the 40 years, you know. So we did have a small amount of, you know, heterosexual sex education, and it wasn't what I was experiencing. So obviously there was that confusion there initially. And I mean, I look back on it now and I think, God, was it? Yeah, my childhood was idyllic, but was that particular period quite traumatic? And yes, it was. And you tend to block out the really traumatic times. Now, I can remember as a child going to my maternal grandparents' house. Now, my grandfather was quite right-wing in his views, and he had a lot of conversations about people of colour, about people and their sexuality, and some of those conversations were quite difficult. And I remember sat there as a child and I would listen to these conversations about my grandfather talking about somebody on the telly who was gay, and it was in a derogatory way. Now look, don't get me wrong, I love my grandfather to bits, but that kind of affected me because I was aware at that age that I was different. I wouldn't say I was aware that my sexuality was gay. I mean, these days people are aware of their sexuality at a very early age, but back then I was just aware that I was different and attracted to other men. And it made it quite hard for me. And as a child, I loved my grandparents dearly, but I did back away. And over the years, I did lose touch with that side of my family. And it was a hard choice, and it was a choice based on, you know, difficult memories to contend with. And now I'm not the only gay in my family, there are others, and they coped better, but they were younger than me. So if you like, I was the first of our family to come out as gay, and that made it hard, really did make it hard for me. And I'm not sort of saying, oh, woe is me, but I think mentally it did affect me quite dramatically. And my my cowardly choice was to back away and stay away, because I didn't think I was loved or liked for that reason. Patently, that was not true. And, you know, if given time again, I would go back and I would do it completely differently. I really would. But there's no changing the past, and you just have to live with the choices you make, really. The other side, my father's family, those grandparents, they were more liberated, I guess. So my grandfather was in the Merchant Navy, and he often had conversations with me about, he worked with a lot of other gay guys, or not other gay guys because he wasn't gay, but he worked with gay guys on the ship. So he was quite aware of that side of life. So he was far more accepting. And I mean, the sad thing is that he had Parkinson's. So the time where I would have loved to have built a more, you know, meaningful relationship with Grandad, he wasn't able to communicate in the same way, and that was hard. That was really hard. I suppose with Nan was a bit more. She always referred to my husband as my friend, and I think initially that was the same with my parents, really, and they were wonderful. So Mum and Dad were both exceedingly wonderful, welcoming and accepting, and it must have been really hard for them, because you know, they had to, gosh, you know, I think Mum initially referred to any partner that I may have had as a friend, and over time she understood that, you know, Daryl was my husband or my then partner, and referred to him as such. But it's difficult. It's difficult for that generation, because I guess they're not really used to it in the same way they are today. So whereas I refer to Daryl as my husband now, quite naturally, it wasn't the done thing back then. You know, there was no marriage, obviously. Now, obviously, as a young kid, exploring your sexuality is quite difficult. And obviously, I don't want to go into great detail, but there were other kids at my school who are also gay. And the funny thing is, either we migrated to those people, or yeah, we must have known that each of us was gay, because my friends were gay. And that quite amuses me, actually, because it's the same with Daryl. The friends he went to school with in Kalgoorlie are also gay. So how does that happen? I'd love to know. Look, if you have the answers, let me know. So exploring sexuality at that age was, God, it was swings and roundabouts, really. It was a bit cumbersome. You know, even things from, you know, watching television and your first crush, or yeah, it's hard. We didn't have the internet, so, you know, it was TV. And, you know, I had my first crush from, gosh, who was it? Dynasty, Stephen, and I can't believe I remember that name, but Stephen from Dynasty, I had a crush on. And there was, oh Christ, the names. I think the other one was Christopher Blake as an actor, and he was in a variety of different things on British TV at the time. And these names just come back to you. And he was another crush. Presenters on Blue Peter, there were a couple of them as well. So look, as a child, I was kind of aware that, you know, I was attracted to other men. And I suppose the difficulty arose is sort of when Margaret Thatcher got into power, I suppose before as well. I mean, there was no real mechanisms in place for me to like discuss my sexuality with anyone. And they introduced Section 28, where you were not allowed to promote non-traditional family-based sexualities at all. I don't quite know. I was unable to talk to an adult about my sexuality. So, I had a lot of anxieties and fears about it, especially about the time of HIV and AIDS and that ghastly advert of the gravestone hitting the floor. If you know, you know. And I was unable to talk about my fears with anyone, and certainly no one in authority, and obviously my parents not, because I didn't know quite how they would react. I mean, I should have known, because my dad is, he is a socialist, really. He's a libertarian, and he believes in people's right to choose. And although this isn't a choice as such, this is me, this is who I am. He believes that people should be who they want to be, and that's important. And I'm probably using all the wrong words, but I'm trying to put myself in my father's position, really. So yeah, it was hard because I was unable to talk about who I really was, and it wasn't until I suppose I went to university that I was truly able to be open about my sexuality, and certainly with the people I went to university with, and gradually with school friends, etc., etc. Now it's not an open secret, and I'm quite happy about who I am and the way I was born. But back then, I wasn't, really not, and I find it hard looking back at that period because the world has moved on so much, and we use so many different words now and to describe different genders, etc. I still find it difficult as a 54-year-old gay man putting my life in the same context, because it was different. We had gay characters on the television. Mr. Humphrey's Am I Being Served being one, Larry Grayson from the Generation Game. There were those gay characters, and I was aware that they made me laugh, and their humour was my humour. It still is my humour. But today I have to roll back a bit because I'm told that it wasn't right, and it's the wrong thing. But was it? Because I was truly comfortable with it. Am I wrong? Who's wrong? I don't know. The world has gone completely the other way now. And in a lot of respects, that's a good thing. But you're kind of asking me to forget my upbringing and, the people I grew up with on the television, and, the things I experienced, and the way I referred to myself then. I have to refer to myself in a different way today. It's kind of taking away who I really am. And yes, I'm gay, I am, but I'm also comfortable with the period I grew up in and the 1970s and all its faults, because yes, there were faults, but by God, there are faults today as well. There really are. And it's not for me to get controversial, and I don't intend to get controversial, but I am at odds with many things that are being taught today, and I'm not going to go into detail about them because I know I get lambasted and attacked and all the rest of it. But I'm just happy to know that I was comfortable then with who I was eventually. Childhood was, yes, difficult, really hard. Surprisingly, the people, it makes me laugh, because whether it's your parents or the people you went to school with, they all say the same thing. I always knew. We knew. And one of the stories I write about in the book is about a little bag I used to carry around with me. It used to have my things in it, my important things I used to carry around with me everywhere. And my maternal grandmother used to say, she said, I knew you were gay because of that, because you carried this bag around with you, and it was your handbag, you know, it was your life in a bag. That's just stereotyping, really, and I'm sure all children do the same thing. But that was my nan's way of saying, I knew, and my mum knew, and my dad knew, and my aunts knew, they all knew, and then there's me sort of got all this anxiety inside of me, afraid to sort of let it out, and really I should have done. But we didn't come out at 13 years old as they do today, and younger. You know, I was 20, 21, 22. I didn't even come out, actually. I was in Australia with Daryl at the time, and my mum wrote a letter asking if I was gay. And yeah, I admitted it. So yeah, she knew, and she told me, which is quite ironic, really. And sadly, my mother's no longer with us, but she was, she adored Daryl, and she referred to him as her son, as much as my dad does today. So yeah, sexuality had a pretty profound effect on my life. I guess in many ways it affected my career path, especially when I met Daryl, because, you know, we were trying to fight to stay together. So the last thing on either of our minds was building a meaningful career, and that was hard, because at the time there was nothing in place to look out for us or protect us in law. So we just had to travel from country to country wherever we could, you know, which country would accept us more at the time. And Daryl was never allowed to follow a career, well, for a very long time, because that was part of the conditions of his visa in the UK. So it did make my life more difficult. And again, it's not to say woe is me again, because there are plenty of gay people who have gone through lots of difficulties, and they've been fine, and they've come out okay. But I think the difference with me is the difference is the relationship I had with a foreign national. That kind of made it hard, and I think my own anxieties and fears, because I'm a very anxious person, exceedingly so, and I still am. And, you know, I used to take medication for that at one stage, but my anxiety is absolutely off the wall sometimes. So back then, I think it was built from then. That's when it sort of became a problem, and it sort of manifested in various different ways since. So yeah, it's become hard. It really has become hard, anxiety over the years. So yeah, it's been a hard road, and again, I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm just saying, I'm saying this because that's the facts with me. With you, it may be entirely different. I've got a feeling my generational difference is also a factor. You know, at 54, you know, things were illegal. It's, you know, up until the age of 21 for a period. So if you're gay these days, you've got it good. You really have. You fought battles and you've won, and you've got all the things I would have loved to have had. And yeah, just be happy, you know, because you didn't go through the emotional turmoil that me and others like me did, and continue to do so in other countries. So, you know, it's not all good, not all good across the world at all. Thank you for listening. A bit rambly again. I shall be continuing to write the book. When it's out, I will let you all know. And I've got a title for it. So it's going to be called A Pocket Full of Memories. And yeah, it's coming along nicely. And I hope you like it. I've been talking for 24 minutes. It's far too long. Anyway, have a good one. Ciao.